Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro.
Well, look at that. It's gonna be May 5th to 11th. Tali here in Seattle. Ophi in New York. And yes, indeed. I'm so relieved. I knew that May, despite the craziness of the world, would still feel a little better personally, with less retrogrades and more nature, more summery, summer approaching weather.
We did call it the week of touching grass and grassroots action last week. We both did some serious landscaping. I actually got away from my computer for almost an entire day and just, raked and dug and trimmed bushes and did all the things. Our dad is a landscaper, as some of you know. 80 years old, and we were home, and he was doing the spring cleaning for about 5 neighbors. So hopefully we've inherited his genes. But we worked with him when we were teenagers, cutting lawns and planting and hauling topsoil. And people are like
an outdoor gym,
it really was.
Me. It's like, I don't really like the gym, but when it gets warm out and I can go and drag branches through the yard, it's just, I highly recommend. Just, I don't know, it just feels like, the more the year goes on, the more contrast. It's like I really feel like I live in 2 different dimensions. The 3D world is just, it feels so out of my hands. I don't even know what to do. So when I'm out in nature and just, or in the flow of things, like I slip into another dimension. And
Kairos time,
yes,
right?
And let's talk about that. Yeah.
Because, this week there's not a ton happening like directly in the skies. We have Mercury moving into Taurus this weekend. Yeah. And we do have, some action on Tuesday. Venus, planet of love, beauty, harmony, is forming a friendly sextile that's 2 signs apart with mysterious Pluto that just turned retrograde on Sunday, May 4th. And then the very same day, Mercury in its very last days in Aries is going to be conjunct Chiron, the wounded healer comet. But mostly
I'm ready for some deep talks with friends and lovers and all manner of people that you're close to, because I don't think you're going to be able to skirt the surface. God, I never use the word lovers. It's so Taurus season, so old-fashioned. I mean, it made my skin crawl in the 70s, but some people have brought it back.
My lover.
Like lovers and gals. I've been called a gal more time than I can count in the last, couple months.
What's up with that?
Seems like it's making a comeback. I don't know. It feels so old-fashioned, but the people who've been using it are like in their 20s and 30s. So, hey.
It's very Hello Dolly kind of, very musical theater in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about slipping into Kairos time, that floaty 5D world where we feel like time is elastic and an hour goes by and feels like 5 minutes because you're so in the flow or so in the zone. And Saturn, which actually is the ruler of time, and the ruler
AKA Chronos, the root of chronological.
Mm-hmm. Right. Has been in Pisces since March 7th of 2023, and it's leaving for a little while, one of the pendulum swings of the year of these outer planets. It's moving into Aries this May 24th to September 1st, and then it gets back in there on February 13th, 2026 to May 12th, 2028. So we get a little sneak peek. But the last time Saturn was in Aries was in 1998. It hasn't been back there since, but nearly 30 years. And we are going to want to enjoy as much as we can this last little bit of Saturn and Pisces, even though Saturn isn't enjoyable wherever it is, it does put some structure into our dreams in Pisces.
Yeah, Saturn in Pisces has been interesting. Like we, just as we predicted, the whole psilocybin movement and injectables, also Pisces is pharmaceuticals or dream states or, psychedelics. And Saturn, when Saturn comes to a sign, it tends to legitimize, sometimes even legalize certain things and bring them into mainstream consciousness. So Saturn and Pisces brought us a lot of interesting flowy things that were intangible, which is Pisces, and made them tangible, which is Saturn's domain. So it was an interesting combination of
Yeah, thinking about
contrasts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm thinking about how so many women in our generation and Gen X have been so fortunate to, even if we want to talk about changing the clock as we enter perimenopause and menopause, now have hormone replacement therapy. Slap on an estrogen patch, you pop a progesterone, and all of a sudden, no hot flashes, no, a lot, just all of the symptoms that made menopause feel like a curse, the change, have been
right.
mitigated in many ways. Obviously you can't make them go away altogether, but
Well, there was actually an article in National Geographic that flashed on my Apple News yesterday. It was like, could we end menopause? Is it even necessary anymore? And there's some researchers. So, I mean, like, I don't know, like, does a woman want to give birth at 80 years old? Probably not. I mean, you'll find at least one of, anywhere, but I thought it's very speculative, but
sp-
still, like, I was like, is that
was it
even
saying
an
that,
option? So,
well,
yeah.
it probably will be, from what I'm understanding, with Pluto retrograde. Pluto on Sunday, May 4th, turned retrograde until October 13th in Aquarius. First year it's retrograde, fully in Aquarius. The last 2 years it went retrograde in Aquarius and slipped back into Capricorn. The Pluto and Capricorn era is over for another 250 years. But so I think, Pluto and Aquarius has been really advancing technology, just like you were saying, like Saturn and Pisces. We have people injecting GLP-1s, semaglutides,
Microdosing that even.
who isn't microdosing psilocybin these days? It's just like, but Pluto in Aquarius simultaneously is speeding up and creating this subterfuge around our data. And, with Doge, raiding the government and data mining, which we know that that's what they've been doing. There's even been reports and whistleblowers coming out. Elon Musk, well, we'll talk about that a little later. He's leaving Doge this week. Well, he's got what he wanted. He's got our data. Now, what's he going to do with it? And that brings me to my point. I mentioned a few podcasts ago that I was reading Futurist and Aquarius. I think he's a Harvard professor, Ray Kurzweil. His book, The Singularity is Nearer, which just came out last year. He wrote The Singularity is Near in the 90s and basically predicted AI as it is today. So it's a fascinating book, unsettling in many ways, but weirdly soothing too. And he's saying, the future in 2030s, 2040s are going to be is nanotechnology, robotics. We're already seeing robotics being a huge thing. Here we have all this talk of, in industry and factories coming back to the US. That's not necessarily going to bring jobs because robotics are what runs so many things. But the where science is heading is there'll, to basically, and this is something Elon Musk's Neuralink company has been working steadily towards, to be able to create a brain computer interface where implants are put in the neocortex. That's the outer wrapper around your brain, and that's already being, in production and tested on people who have ALS or have lost their speech, where they can think words and speech comes out. So, with that now being possible, along with GPT advancing, the vision is that we won't have to age, that these, nanobots will go through our bodies, scan them, repair cells that are damaged. They're even projecting that people who are born now could live to 1,000 years old. I mean, I can't imagine
It's a
that.
lot of living.
That's a lot of living, but at the same time, I mean, what if we didn't have to come back lifetime after lifetime? Now, that sounds insane to us here today, but the comparison that he's made is that humans have always adapted. Imagine going back to 1975 and showing somebody your iPhone. I mean, the only context we had was watching the Jetsons and watching George Jetson phone in to Spacely Sprockets and talk to his boss on this giant TV
How did you
screen.
even remember that?
I don't know.
Spacely sprockets.
I
Yeah.
don't-
And while Tali's been binging that, I have been binging on some human design. And we have a special episode coming up on May 12th with one of our human design friends, very first person to introduce us to it, Erin Claire Jones. So we'll have a special episode as her book comes out on that day. But, she once again, talking to her sent me down a rabbit hole deeper than I've ever gone. And 2027 apparently is a year that ends like an over 400-year cycle. And the guy who created human design, who's no longer alive, hasn't been alive since I think the early 2010s or around that time. He also spoke about what he calls the great mutation and how people are going to become less emotional and more almost like robots in 2027. And that is a 400 plus year cycle. So I don't know, maybe we should be really enjoying our empathy and humanness for a couple more years here. Those of us who have any left, I see it drying up.
I wonder if humanity is going to kind of split into factions too, where there'll be people who just reject outright anything. I mean, people don't even want vaccines, although it's just so funny how many anti-vaxxers I know that actually get Botox. I'm like, so you'll put cow poison in your face, but you won't get an mRNA.
Wow.
Okay, I mean, it's whatever. Anyways, that's all personal preference. What you want to stick in your body, no or not, no judgments here. Just don't give me your measles. But I think we're kind of ahead. Like that divide is already happening. The conspirituality, or people who just simply like, where can we even have any kind of bodily autonomy? It comes into a bodily autonomy conversation.
Did you just
Like,
make up a word? Because it's a good one.
what, conspirituality?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I wish I
Oh,
did. I wish I could
that's a
take
good
credit for
word.
that. So, I know it is. It's kind of the whole, the crossover of
The
where we see.
wellness world and the conspiracy. Ooh, whoever
Yeah.
came up with them, I bow
I
with
think
that
I even
word.
think there might be a documentary by that name. Yeah.
Well, you know, speaking of those things, one of my friends, hey Bronwyn, shout out to our Aries friend. Once again, she gets lots of shout outs on this podcast. She is a font of great suggestions, and she directed me to a podcast that we're not fans of for very obvious reasons, but she's like, but he had this guy on. So it was Joe Rogan, who's a Leo, and Mars is in Leo. So I knew he was going to bubble up as one of the people. He interviewed one of the UAP, UFO remote viewing people who brought Ingo Swann into the government, who remote viewed Jupiter and was a spy for the government using his psychic and remote viewing powers. And apparently, There's a documentary coming out about that, I think, called Disclosures. So I don't know what's about to happen, but as the pendulum starts swinging toward the summer transit, so we've got Saturn going into Aries, we've got Jupiter leaving Gemini on June 9th. So this is the last full month of Jupiter in Gemini. And the big one, Uranus going into Gemini on July 7th till November 7th. And then for a very long time next year, all the way into the 2030s, that's going to repeat what we went through in the atomic age of 1941 to 49. So all this stuff we're talking about, from UAPs to government, projects and everything else like that, to to experiments of every nature and kind are ahead.
One of the cycles that is winding down this month is Jupiter in Gemini. So Jupiter's been in Gemini since last year, May 25th of 2024, and it leaves and moves on to Cancer June 9th of this year, so in a month essentially, and then it stays there in Cancer for a year until June 30th, 2026. So this is a relevant discussion here to Elon Musk leaving Doge, because he is a Cancer, and Jupiter in your sign can really, it can either overexpose you or bring you this wave of luck. Donald Trump, seemed like there was no way he could win again, but Jupiter moved into Gemini, and it was over his North Node during the election, and his sun, close to his sun.
And that happened shortly before the debate, like about a month before the disastrous debate with Joe Biden that really gave him that advantage. And then it was just, Jupiter was on his side, much
And
to our
it could explain,
chagrin.
yeah, I mean, Jupiter could pump you up with swagger and bluster. Jupiter was Zeus, they're one and the same. So, I mean, he just posted an AI image of himself as the Pope, the latest Jupiter outrage. I mean, talk about a lightning strike, a
Oh my
cry for,
God.
Uranus is coming to Gemini on July 9th. Could that
And
bring a
Saturn in
lightning bolt?
Aries, coming in a couple weeks on May 24th is definitely checks and balances, because we've had Neptune in Aries since March 30th. First time in our lives since the mid 1800s. And we've talked about that a lot. But, that can really bring delusions of grandeur. The Aries ego mixed with that Neptune, just lack of touch with reality, combined together is just really stirring up some outrageous ego trips here. But when Saturn comes along and moves into Aries too, I do think that is going to be, if not a hard stop, a brake pump or even slam on some of the ego mania that's gone awry. And it could entrench someone with a big ego, but it can also work to modify that. So here's hoping. But until then, we are going to be seeing some out of control stuff like that for sure.
And I think Saturn, as it winds down in Pisces, we were saying earlier, this next few weeks, you could really use the time to go into flow state as much as you possibly can. There may be this feeling, this pressure to do something, to, put a plan in place. Saturn in Pisces is more about expanding your consciousness, calling in messages, divine downloads. And you have to get yourself into that mindset. So do what it is, do what you can for yourself. We have our ancestral breathwork journey with sand signs. It's women only for this, but if you're interested in joining us and doing some Saturn and Pisces connecting to your ancestors and guides, it's this Tuesday, May 6th at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's on Zoom. If you go to astrostyle.com/events, you can sign up. We've been doing them for over a year, and they're truly transcendent. You might cry, you might get energized, you might, connect to relatives you didn't know that you had from
I
the
mean,
other side.
Mercury is going to be together with Chiron. Mercury is communication, Chiron is healing of wounds. So, truly being able to communicate with
Wow,
ancestors.
that's
And
true.
then
It's happening.
Venus, yeah,
Yeah.
Venus being in flow with Pluto, which is also Pluto is people who've passed away, reincarnation, spirits. Venus is love. So if you want to come feel some ancestral love, we certainly picked a good day for
It's
this
gonna be
month's
they're always so
session.
powerful, but, Sand Symes she calls herself a modern medicine woman. She's a social worker, she's a mother, a grandmother, an incredible force of nature, and one of the most caring and hilarious people you'll meet too. She drops an F-bomb in her, British accent, and, she holds a beautiful, beautiful space. So um and it's free, it's completely free. So just something that we offer because we're all going through so much right now, and it helps us remember that there's more out there and connects us to a bigger sense of oneness and spirit, especially as women right now. And
And as
also
I
just
keep having to
yeah.
remind myself, AI and technology are moving super fast, but consciousness is expanding. The universe is expanding. We are not just these fixed beings. More and more measuring of energy fields and auras and what our thoughts can do has happened. So just remember when you feel helpless in the 3D world, if you read the news or, see unfair injustices happening around the world as they are, um, remember that you can impact that by working on your own spiritual field and energy.
Yeah, and also, we're seeing Jupiter and Gemini kind of ending in a really powerful way. Jupiter does not like being in Gemini. Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini. I mean, it's uncomfortable there because its natural home is Sagittarius, the opposite sign of Gemini. But Jupiter rules universities. Gemini can rule school K to 12, but we are seeing, there've been huge attacks on universities. Campus protests have been both powerful and kind of out of control in some places, depending on who's looking at it. But now Harvard is fighting back. Deans, professors, are standing up
And there was a
and
big protest at the University of Alabama where Trump gave the commencement address this past week, which was full of the usual hubris and outrageous, just whatever he was babbling about, mostly himself. Um, However, of course, Gemini does rule K through 12 schools, and there's been a lot of attack, but the Maine governor, Janet Mills, won the lawsuit against the Trump administration, which was trying to freeze funding to the Maine public schools. It was going to leave a lot of children without food, without meals, school meals, school lunches. So in in that regard, you can't mess with, it's just
Jupiter can throw a lot of swagger your way. I mean, we should call this the week. I was going to say this is the week of the imploding ego.
And really, when Jupiter goes into Cancer June 9th for a year, we're going to see even more emphasis on kids, home, family, safety, security. Cancer, Gemini, Cancer, and Leo are all associated with childhood in their own way. They're the earlier signs, but really caring for children is going to be much more of a Jupiter and Cancer thing, whereas Jupiter and Gemini, not so much, not as much. That's more of a arguing, debating, just the divisiveness, the dividedness of everything that we're experiencing, the duality. Really, really hope that we'll get some relief from that. Jupiter has supersized that. So, hopefully the children who were deported and the horrible things that have happened during Jupiter and Gemini will be,
Kids who are being
yeah,
denied food and starved in Gaza and in other
yeah.
war-torn areas around
Hmm.
even Russia, Ukraine, Sudan. I mean, there's so many, I think attention will come to that. Now, Jupiter in Cancer is exalted, which is interesting because that's actually its happiest place.
Which you wouldn't think because Jupiter rules travel and Cancer rules the homes. So it's kind of funny that it
I
is,
kind of
but
think of it as maybe it's like feeling at home in the world is
mm,
like the vibe. I mean, with
well, I
all
sure hope
the
so because
craziness happening with people's phones being taken away and searched, I think Jupiter and Cancer, we're already seeing a contraction in travel. There's going to be a lot more, a lot less, I think, international traveling. It's already happening. People will be staying
stayed, yeah.
home more. And I wonder if the housing market, which has been kind of stuck with interest rates and everything, could see an uptick. I mean, I wonder if people will start being incentivized to sell their homes because there's a shortage of homes. And I mean, I doubt the current administration here in the United States will address the ridiculously unaffordable rents and the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis going on. And I do think though Jupiter and Cancer, at least for Americans, will probably see a lot of people who can get citizenship elsewhere because of
Yeah.
their
We may
ancestry
see a
moving.
lot of people leaving the country and settling internationally, buying homes. That keeps coming up in my Instagram feed. This is how much it cost us to buy an apartment in France and Spain and Portugal. Now, of course, after the power grid went out, I'm a little
Well,
slightly
people want people to move to their countries because of depopulation, because there are so many more, older people than there are younger that there's like who's going to actually take care of the aging population. So there is incentive for people to be wooing where there's been a population decline to and that's something Pluto and Aquarius kind of rules society and community. So Pluto and Aquarius is reordering these alliances both on a global level with Trump sort of buddying up with people who are our enemies in the past potentially and rejecting
well, that happened the
allies.
last time, not the last time, but during World War II, which we wrote about in the book
Mm.
when Jupiter was in Gemini and the unlikely
Uranus and Gemini
alliance.
too,
Yeah,
right? Hmm.
yeah. But Jupiter and Gemini, the Soviet Union and the US had to become allied to defeat Germany. So it was like the unlikely alliance that happened there. And good God, let that not happen again because there is no reason for us to become BFFs with Putin aside from ones that will benefit a certain Gemini. But I digress. Really, I
Yeah.
am thinking about other things besides that, but it just keeps coming up historically. So,
It's hard to think about anything besides that right now because it's impactful. These are not, I've heard people say, there's so much more going on besides this but this is a seminal time in history. This is not, these are highly charged, highly pivotal times. It's a 9-year numerology,
I
the
have to
end of a
keep reminding myself
cycle,
of that universal 9 year. We're all finishing. 9 years are just
fraught.
historically like, whew, like so karmic, as we've learned from our numerologist Felicia Bender. They are intense, but there's still something kind of magical and surreal about it too as it's happening. Like my friendships have never been better or more interesting or filled with magical serendipities too. So it's very strange to be like feeling the heaviness and the weight of the world, but also this deep connection with people too. I hope you're experiencing
And
that
with
too if you're
spirit,
listening.
you know,
Yeah, it's a
a
spiritual
spiritual
year.
connection with people or a creative connect. I mean, it's like we have to sort of respond in a way that is like soothes our nervous systems
You know
too.
what you're saying about the elderly, that's also a piece of Saturn and Pisces too. Pisces rules old age and and also the shadow side of it, it's prisons as well and
Oh, that's so
detention
right.
centers. So that's a shadow expression of Saturn and Pisces, also Pluto and Aquarius, people being taken away from society. But I've seen some interesting videos about the Netherlands and Japan and how they care for their elderly and people with dementia. They have a dementia cafe or a bunch of dementia cafes in Japan where people who have dementia can work for a couple hours a day, and it's like woven into the experience that they might get your order wrong. It might take a little longer to get. And actually the first dementia cafes were in the Netherlands, but they're all over Japan now. And it's just teaching people to be compassionate to the elderly. So I thought, what a cool, like, I can't even imagine Americans slowing down long enough to do that in our current state. But there's a lot to learn from the way other cultures actually value the people in their society. Look at what, Joe Biden was just discarded and mocked and still is. And, it's just like, yeah, age and aging and ageism are all on the block here
Well,
from
Pluto, we
technology
talk
on
about
down.
Pluto. We read Pluto to filth so often here, but Pluto's a transformer. It can also, represent our evolution from it's like that dark night of the soul and the hero's journey evolving into like the phoenix rising from the ashes. So I mean, sure, here in the United States, we need some serious value checks as a whole. But like you said, there are other countries that are actually value based in just their approach to society in ways that are inspiring. Like I've been saying, like money, being rich and wealthy and flaunting that was so Pluto and Capricorn.
Yeah.
It's not cool anymore. And thank God for that. And I think it's going to become less and less cool to be ostentatiously wealthy over the next couple decades. Like we've got the residual, the Trump club that opened in
The
DC.
executive branch where you have to pay $500,000 to be a member. I mean, there really are at least two different realities. There is this, now I'm free to, I mean, there was that white woman in Minnesota who was caught on the playground using the N word. She was with her kid. She called a 5-year-old autistic kid the N word who had gone in her kid's toys or bag. I mean,
Oh my
but
God.
the worst part is that white supremacists are raising money for her. Apparently, like the
No.
video went viral, so now all of her personal information got exposed and she's being harassed. But it's just so,
It's like how a
it's like,
race to the bottom. I mean,
yeah. So she's
that's
got $500,000 and now she's trying to so like,
good
wait, no
Lord.
teachable moments there, no learning, no like nothing. That it's just people. So
What did she raise like
people started it
so
because
she can buy
now she needs
30
to
dolls?
move for
Oh
her
God.
safety. It's just this open, like, it's okay to be racist. It's okay, it's okay to be, I don't know, like, people are fighting to bring back the things that hurt society, like, and it's just anyway, I
It's the
have no
cult.
words
The
for
cult.
it. Pluto, it's the beginning of Pluto in Aquarius. We always see the bottom before the phoenix rises from the ashes. We get the rubble of it. We get the worst of it. All that crap floats up to the surface. So we are seeing that as Pluto really settles in for this long, next 19 years in Aquarius. The bottom.
Now she could buy her kid 30 dolls instead of 2 for
God.
Christmas.
Oh my
God.
goodness.
Be
Well,
patient.
speaking of values, that brings us to Saturday when Mercury leaves Aries, where it's been since early March. Long extended trip because it went retrograde back into Pisces and had to regain all the ground it lost and go back through all of Aries again. So typically we only have Mercury in a sign for 3 weeks, but it's been a long haul, a couple of months. So Mercury is moving into Taurus, which I think is going to make us slow down, think about what our priorities and values are. Hopefully, those values don't suck. And, yes, people probably will become stubborn and dig in their heels even more. I feel like Aries and Taurus have a lot in common in that department, but we have it can also be a little gentler, a little earthier, um, and a chance to remember what really matters and hopefully reconnect with some humility. We will see about that. So
We shall see.
It's not a hugely eventful week in the stars. We've got the moon, starting the week in Leo, going through Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio. So kind of the little more adult signs. We're hoping for a flash of maturity, insight, self-examination being on the docket this week. And yeah, so happy to say that there aren't a ton of transits happening because it's really kind of the first time in 2025 that we can really be like, okay,
I know this is a light week. There wasn't a lot to
yes,
write about
Pluto's
in the
retrograde,
weeklies
but yeah,
either. I mean,
no, but there's a lot, but it's good. We're getting to
integration a
prepare.
little bit, but also, just I think with Mercury on its last, ending this longer tour of Aries, like you said, we are going to see some ego implosion happening. And Mercury and Taurus is like there with the calculator and the checklist and wanting the data and wanting to know what really happened. Whereas in Mercury and Aries, people were able to you know, suggests that they become the Pope out of nowhere or have this entitled energy or lie about numbers like Scorpio Pam Bondi. Well, I can't believe is the attorney general basically saying that they saved 100 million lives from fentanyl, even though there's only 70,000 people, which is a staggering and awful number too, but 70,000 a year who die from fentanyl. So, just
blatant lying,
blatant swagger, blatant just gaslighting. That Mercury and Aries moves so fast that we can't always catch. It's like, but
been a lot of
Mercury and Taurus is like,
narcissism.
shoo, it's
Been
going
a
to
lot of
slow it
narcissism.
down. It's going, or it's going to it's going to hit, I hope, that wall. I hope it doesn't pull us into the conservative values too much. Jupiter and Cancer could also go that way, but
We'll
if
have to
you
look back to 2013 to mid 2014. That was the last time Jupiter was in Cancer. And yeah, so, we thought it was a good idea maybe just to give you a wider angle perspective so you can start to prepare. Again, we've called 2025, we've named it the year of the divine pendulum. That's the theme. And true to that theme, planets are going to swing into those new signs. We've got Neptune already in Aries. We've got Saturn, Jupiter, and Uranus switching. Jupiter's going to stay in Cancer, but those other two, we have a lot of shifts, and we haven't really seen the reckoning of it all until this summer.
and
So
next week's more active. We have a full moon. We have
right in
some
Scorpio.
transits coming up. But if you guys have been enjoying the podcast, we would love it if you hit the subscribe button. It really helps us stay out there and get more, visibility on the networks, and so we can share our astro info with more people out there, and would absolutely love it if you have been enjoying and want to give us a glowing 5-star review. We would be ever so thankful for that. And, we've been loving this. Has been such a great way to connect with everyone. A lot of you guys have been telling us that it's becoming part of your Sunday or Monday ritual.
The
So,
drive to work. Yeah, we really appreciate it. And if you want to go deeper, if you're feeling dysregulated by this year, or if you have something great happening or a decision to make that you want some extra insight on, we still have our calendars open for private one-on-one chart readings. We have a little bit of a waiting list, but we would love to help guide you into the summer and the rest of the year.
this year we decided to open up some space. So, it's really a joy to get to have that one-on-one
Yeah.
with so many of you.
So many
And
amazing people in our
I
audience. We're always
know, we
so
really do.
honored, like this kind of person follows us. How incredible. So
I know.
it's really, really affirming that hopefully we're doing something right with these stars here. So
And the
yeah.
power of astrology to stretch across so many fields of interest and genres, and that you can be a scientist or a therapist or a medical doctor or, a stay at home mom, and have that still find that astrology is a powerful tool in your life, and we know that. But for the
Mhm.
longest time, no, we were having to convince people of that, or just say, hey, try it, you'll
And we
like
weren't
it.
really ever trying
We weren't
for the record, we've
proselytizing,
never
no.
tried to convince anyone, but they would just be like it would be so far off their radar that they'd be like, "Okay, maybe." I mean,
Moon sign, what's
what?
that? Yeah.
Yeah, sun sign even, and yeah, just anytime I think, "Oh, this person works in this field," they'll roll their eyes. They'll never like, "No, no, I get proven wrong." So happy to know that astrology is out there. There still are plenty of doubters and skeptics and cynics and whatever. That's okay. You're missing out, but that's okay. More
Right.
for us now. There's plenty to go around. Plenty of
But it is
stars.
just so fascinating how cycles repeat themselves. So we're,
Yeah.
this year is a big one with Pluto and Aquarius, where it was during the end of the American Revolution and the Constitution. Uh, s- all the Hamilton moments happened the last time, which gives us some hope.
And lastly, if you are curious about what's ahead, you've been kind of like, I don't even want to know, and now you're ready because you can kind of look back and make sense of it. Grab a copy of our 2025 horoscope book. There's so much in there to guide you through the entire year. Even if you haven't read up on the first few months, I mean, the most important and significant transits are just ahead of us. So we have a special 50% off code, May 50. We'll drop that and the link in the show notes, but go grab yourself a copy of it. You can get it for just your sign or all 12 signs. We have a trend report and yeah, just
And the
all
one with
kinds of
your
things.
sign actually is calendar pages in where you can track the moon or know if there's a hot spot, and there's room to write notes. So people have really been enjoying it. It's smaller too. It will fit into a slightly bigger purse. What is it, like 6 by 9 or 5 by 8? I think
Mhm.
so it's a real nice way to, if you're someone who likes to jot down notes about what happened during a specific day, or make sure that you're not going to plan your, vacation during Mercury retrograde, although, or know that you are and come prepared for it. It's
And
super
if you're
helpful.
a read on the iPad or the phone person, the book also all the books also come as PDFs, so you can get a digital version too, and just have it with you. We include a free digital version of the big book with, I think, with all of them. I think when you buy a paperback, you get a free digital version. So yeah, so if you don't have yours yet, you will be very glad you did. Help
And
you
yeah,
make sense of everything.
astrostyle.com/2025 dash book. If you just want the link, astrostyle.com/2025 dash book. I have to say it in my radio announcer voice. Anyways, we are going to get out and enjoy a little nature here after recording. Pluto is now retrograde. So a little bit of a digital detox, stepping away from some of the Aquarian GPT and maybe some analog friend time, a little more
Yes,
IRL
please.
community time before the nanobots invade our brains and turn us into a walking cloud.
Oh my God.
Not looking forward to that era. I think I'll be a resistor. I can already tell. Do not install anything into my neocortex. That's my mantra. All right, everyone. Have have a great week. We'll be
Yeah.
back next week with
For the full
more.
moon. How?
How
All
oh,
right.
all right. Bye everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to AstroTwins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.